Hey there, it's Mary Claire. I write Altars and Altars and also the Reluctant Demonologist on Substack. I'm the author of In Thy Dark Streets Shineth, which is available on Amazon. I also produce the Horno More videos on TikTok. Those are about my life after sex slavery. I'll drop the details in the comments below. Content creation is new for me, so I don't have the latest equipment, and hell, I don't even really know how to edit videos, and I have to wait for one of my teenagers to show me how. I'm doing my best, and as you can see, I'm not even very good at lighting, and I've been playing with this lighting for over an hour now, so unfortunately this is as good as it's gonna get. I'll try and record in the daytime next time, I guess. I promised you guys spirituality content, and so I'm here to deliver that, whether I can do it perfectly or not. This semester in graduate school, now I'm studying spirituality, so this is perfect for these videos. I'm studying St. John of the Cross, and so I'm going to do a bit of a series about him. You know, that gets us off to a good start with some of this content. One thing that St. John of the Cross wrote about often was the dark night of the soul. He gave us the awareness of the dark night, the framework, and kind of the language to use to be able to express these things. He also talked a lot about redemptive suffering, and that's a particular interest of mine as a person who has suffered satanic ritual abuse, kind of like the stuff in the Epstein files. And I have dissociative identity disorder as a result of that. And so some of the ways I've been healing and whatever, I'm interested in it from a redemptive suffering point of view, but that will be a later video. Satanic ritual abuse is the worst of the worst in the Epstein files. The eating of babies, murder and trafficking of children, and much more. I believe the things in the files because I've seen it personally. I've experienced it. Now that it's salacious, people want to feast on the horror, but those of us who were victims were treated badly by the public and society at large until now. But let's get to the topic of the day, which is the dark night of the soul. Thomas More, author of Dark Nights of the Soul, points out that one of the characteristics of the dark night is that it just happens. It sneaks up on us, takes us by surprise, and we are forced to live through it whether we want to or not. More points out that the dark night is something we get trapped in involuntarily, and we have no choice really but to wait it out until it's over. What matters is how we have changed once the dark night is over, because that's what it tends to do. Some people suffer from the dark night for much longer than others. Mother Teresa, who was a great saint, suffered a dark night for 60 years, and I didn't actually know that until recently, until I started studying this course. She didn't feel the presence of God, but she trusted that God was there regardless. I'll talk more about her in the video about redemptive suffering. One of the things about studying spirituality is that it's a self-implicating discipline, and really what that means is that it's something that's changing me as I learn, because, you know, you can't do course about St. John of the Cross and not be changed by it, or understand myself a little more. Learning about the Dark Night has been comforting for me, and it's made so much sense to me because I went through my own Dark Night of the Soul last year. It happened the week of my baptism anniversary, which is a big deal to me, and it's something I celebrate each year. Baptism was hard. It was physically, spiritually, and emotionally painful, and I wanted to run away. The forces of evil fought like hell to stop me from getting baptized. I cried, yelled in agony about how much it hurt, but I got through it. You'll be relieved to know that I was not baptized in a church service. That's because, you know, I knew that it was going to be rough, and it was really on an emergency basis anyway, so I just needed to get it done. I wasn't expecting company on the day that the dark night happened, but there was a knock on my front door. I was peeved because I thought it was either someone wanting me to vote for a particular political candidate, which I I'm less likely to vote for your candidate if you knock on my door. This is my private residence. Leave me alone. Or that it was a salesperson or a Mormon or Jehovah's Witness, because I have those come by a lot. You know, the usual suspects. But when I got to the door, I was met with an extremely aggressive woman who said she was from Child Protective Services to do an investigation. I was blown away. I had no clue why she would be showing up at my doorstep, but she was aggressive and she already had a chip on her shoulder. She removed my children that day, although it was illegal for her to do so, and I know this because I checked with an attorney. The allegations were that my house was uninhabitable and that my children were truant. My house was messy, I mean, there's no getting around that, but my children are teenagers and they hadn't kept up with their chores. It sure as hell wasn't uninhabitable, and the investigator even admitted that at the time. The next day, I went in to have a meeting with her and her supervisor like I had been told to do. And the supervisor had told me that they aren't actually allowed to remove children from messy homes or truancy. And my children weren't truant, they were homeschooled. One has since returned to public school because he wanted to. But those were the two allegations, and the only two allegations I was given on the day. When I went to the meeting the next day at their office, I was blindsided when I was given a list of around 13 or so very serious allegations that just were horrific. I found out later that the investigator had simply made them up to justify her illegal removal of my children. When the investigation was over, I still had an open case for a minimum of 90 days by law, which was closed out at exactly 90 days. The caseworker confirmed that there had only ever been those two allegations, and so did the youth court when I called them. So the investigator really was just trying to cover her ass. Our family was separated for 5 weeks while CPS went on their fishing expedition, trying to find anything they could to throw at me and make stick. My children were traumatized, as were my cats, my adult daughter, and myself. It was an awful 5 weeks. When I was finally cleared and CPS admitted there was no abuse and were forced to return my children to me, a lot of damage had already been done. I didn't end up celebrating my baptism anniversary as I was frozen, thrown into circumstances that I had not expected. It attacked the very core of who I am, not just as a mother, but as someone who has worked really hard to break generational cycles of violence and trauma. In a court of law, people are innocent until proven guilty, but with CPS I was guilty until proven innocent, and they took their sweet old time. I had no real way of expressing how I felt other to frame it within the context of prostitution, because after all I was a former sex slave, and so this was the language I had, and so I likened it to an emotional prostitution. I told those who loved me that I had to spend all my energy on kicking ass and sucking dick if I ever wanted to see my children again, and the idea was, being the submissive and just doing exactly what I was told, or suffer. Of course, those same people tried to help me reframe it and come up with a different narrative on that, but I simply couldn't, just not at the time at least. When my children were returned to me, I still wasn't able to function spiritually. I had dropped all of my spiritual disciplines, including praying the rosary, which I used to do every day because it was important to me spiritually. I didn't pray the daily office like I usually did. I didn't read the Bible. I didn't do anything except show up at church on Sundays for communion, which is what kept me sustained. My world was dark and I was broken. My only real prayers were tears of grief and anger that I cried every single day, sometimes for hours at a time. I felt abandoned by God and my friends, despite neither being true. I've come to look at this through the lens of the agony of Jesus in the garden during his passion, but it took a long time. And by the way, that's what Mother Teresa started seeing her suffering as. I'm still not sure what good might have come from this whole situation, but I do know it fundamentally changed something inside of me, and I'm only now really being able to process that whole ordeal. But I've started praying the rosary again, I went to confession. I'm picking up the pieces as best I can. This particular dark night of the soul is technically over, but I'm not the person I was when it all began, and that's what part of what happens in the dark nights. It's part of their purpose, according to Thomas More. John of the Cross saw the dark night as mostly purgative, and I know that it was for me, even though I don't really understand how just yet. I'm hoping and praying that I will eventually get some clarity on the whole situation, but that time isn't now. I'm glad to be spiritually functional again, but it's taking time to get back to where I was. In another video, I'll discuss the purgation within the context of John of the Cross's poem, The Living Flame of Love. Hey, thanks for watching, and may God's peace be with you.